Nice.
So yeah, no fitting issues.
Yep. Rita, you see Balo Mano behind me?
Yeah, I do.
Doesn't that make you smile?
It does.
Probably it makes me cold.
I know. Playing in a place that had no heat. I know.
Yeah. In the bubble.
Nobody wanted to take their sweats off and play.
Yeah, we had the one I remember the most is Bev when she had her winter coat. Well, you were kind of with her too, but
yeah.
All right, everyone. We are officially live on Facebook. So thank you everyone for tuning in to this week's edition of our Facebook Live series that's sponsored by Verizon. My name is Melissa Zhang and I am our communications manager. I'm very excited for today's virtual Olympic reunion that we're doing. And the 4 guests that I have with me on today are very, very special people. So I'm excited to stop talking soon and let the 4 of them share their stories. With me today, I have Sherry Winn, Phyl Dwight, Carol Koch Lindsay, and Rita Clanton. Before I let each of you introduce yourselves, though, I wanted to share a bit of each of your athletic accomplishments because I thought that they were just really incredible, and I wanted to toot your horn a little bit because I don't know if all of you will do it on your own. So starting with Phyl Dwight, who played center back for USA Team Handball. Mary was a 5-athlete sport in college and had standout performances in all 5 of them. She played varsity basketball, volleyball, track, cross country, and softball at Missouri State, making her one of the school's most accomplished athletes. After the Olympics, she returned to MSU as their softball coach. She also coached for the University of Iowa and Kansas State at different times, and she was inducted into MSU's Athletics Hall of Fame in 1981. So Phyl, thank you for being here with us today. Okay. Next, we have Carol Koch Lindsay, who was a circle runner for USA Team Handball. Carol played basketball in college at Purdue University, but she was also a starting halfback for the Purdue field hockey team. And she had never played field hockey before getting to college, which is pretty extraordinary. She was also a starting shortstop for the Purdue softball team. So Koch, thank you also for being with us today. Finally, we have Sherry Winn, who is a wing player for USA Team Handball. She was a 2-time All-American college basketball player prior to joining USA Team Handball and set 11 records during her basketball career. She went on to play a number of World Championships, Pan American Games, and 2 Olympic Games with handball. And then after her handball career, she coached college women's basketball for 23 years across 3 different university programs and collected and won a number of conference and national championships. So Sherry, also thank you for being with us today. And finally, we have Rita Clanton, who is a more versatile player at wing and back. She attended Auburn University, where she was named to all-state teams in both basketball and volleyball across 2 consecutive years. Rita was named the nation's best female college athlete in 1974. And then in 1985 was the US Olympic Committee's Sportswoman of the Year. She was also the US Olympic Committee's National Coach of the Year in 1996, and she was inducted into the Tiger Trail of Auburn in 1997 and the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame in 2010. So thank you as well, Rita, for being here. And that was a huge slew of incredible accomplishments from this group of 4 women. I'm really excited now to stop talking and let each of them share their stories. So we're just going to do a few minutes with each of you, maybe share how you discovered the sport of handball. Obviously, you all were star athletes before that. And then, kind of talk about your handball journey, maybe who helped you along the way, that sort of thing. So Phyl, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, that's good because I'm the oldest. So
Yeah, as of today, she's the oldest. Happy birthday, Phil.
Happy birthday, Phil. Happy birthday.
yes, it is. So yeah, we have some similarities in stories, but I think people need to understand that when we were in high school, there were no sports at all, no sports for girls. So when I ended up in college, I went to a place at Southwest Missouri State at the time, now Missouri State, and it was like, anything I could do, any sport I could play, I wanted to play every season there. So that's how and there were times I was attending 2 practices on the same day, volleyball and basketball. So I'd be 2 hours one place and 2 hours another. So that was my introduction, and then they just to sports, and I was just hungry to be able to play. So handball kind of came with that because there was a letter sent out to university to say, hey, we're looking for multi-sport athletes because we got this new sport, team handball for women, and it's going to be in the 1976 Olympic Games for the first time for women. And hey, you might even get to travel a little bit and maybe even make an Olympic team, And so that went out to all these different universities. So that's how I got involved, because an athletic director gave me that letter, and we ended up at Iowa State University at a tryout. So and that's where I met. Well, Sherry's the youngster here, so she wasn't part of that group, but the two, Coke and Rita, and I were all at that tryout. So that was the pace, or how we got started, is through that recruitment effort, within that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'll chime in. My situation parallels Mary Phil's perfectly, because we're the same age, and growing up in Alabama, no girls sports in high school, and finally, because of there was an organization though, Phil, when we got to college around women's college athletics. It wasn't the NCAA, but it was the AIW. So there was a national governing body. And there weren't national championships in any sport, I don't think, maybe until after Title IX in '72. I'm not real sure, but
there were championships with the AIW. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And but like my first, experience with competitive sports was also in college at Auburn University. That's where I went to school, and like I had graduated in August and got a teaching job. And then my volleyball coach called me telling me about the same letter that, Mary Phil received at Southwest Missouri State, and said about the sport of team handball. It could have been hopscotch. I wouldn't care. I would have gone, because just like Phil said, you're still just so starved to play and, wanted more opportunities to compete in sports. So, said yes to the letter and went to Iowa State, and there Coke and Phil were, and I don't know how many others. How many of y'all think were there at that camp? That tryout?
How many? Oh, I don't know. I was thinking about, 40 or something. I don't know.
I was thinking 40 or 50. There were a lot of people there.
Yeah, there were a lot of people. Yep.
Coke, your turn.
Coke,
yeah.
You're up.
Uh-oh, she's
two, right? Not really.
Yeah.
But I did get to have a couple years in high school of, it wasn't a true sports, like a conference for basketball and other sports, but they had at least they had activities, and we did play against other schools. But it's the same thing. When I went to Purdue, I went out for every sport they had, because I hadn't been burned out in anything. And while I was at Purdue, the basketball coach got the letter from the athletic director, and she gave it to me and said, I think you should go try this. And off I went to Iowa. First time I was ever on a plane, met all these great people. And it was it was kind of brutal. We didn't know the rules, so we just kind of were pounding on each other, but we all, really, when you think about it, that was 1974, and 10 years later, we finally went to the Olympics. So we all had that drive that maybe we would not have had we had sports from 4th grade on up. And I'm glad that my career took the path that it did, and I'm glad I was, was still hungry to try to achieve whatever I could in the sport of handball. So it's been good to me.
Yeah, mine's a little bit different than theirs because obviously they're just a little bit older. I'm not going to say how much older, but a little bit. But I got to the first time I was at Texas A&M University and playing basketball. And a lot of things had happened in my life, so I'm not going to say everything that happened, but I wasn't a happy person. That much I can tell you. I was a very depressed, very angry person. And somebody introduced me to handball, and they're like, "Oh, you want to play this sport?" And I go, "I don't play racquetball." And they're like, "No, it's different. You get to hit people." I'm like, "I get to hit people? Oh, fantastic. Exactly what I want. I get to hit people." So I was introduced at a club level, and they said they were going to go to New York City to the national tournament. And I had never been to New York City. So I went to New York City and I got to watch the icons. So at that time, everybody's talking about Phyl Dwight and Coke and Cindy Stinger and Rita Clanton and Pam Boyd. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I got to watch them play. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm playing with the icons of the sport. And of course, all I knew was to hit people. That's all I could do. I really couldn't do anything else. But luckily, I was encouraged by some of the players to try out for the sports festival. And that was the entrance. I tried out for the sports festival, made it. And then at that time, the national coach, Javier, asked me on to the national team. So I was just fortunate that things lined up for me in a way. Like if I would have still been playing basketball, I would have never tried out for team handball. I quit college and joined the national team. But it just, when you're in life and things that look so horrible for me at that time in my life ended up being the best thing in the world, because I got to meet these wonderful people who were phenomenal. They, I don't know how much, they had to endure a lot for me. So let's just say that they were very kind, very considerate, very loving people. And I really literally owe my life to these people. So I love them.
Ditto.
So that was obviously, a good introduction of how you got started and joined the national team. Let's talk a bit about the national team and, the training and what that looked like leading up to the Olympics. Mary Phyl, I know there was a duct tape story in there somewhere that you had to mention just about how different things were back then in terms of, finances and training. So I'd love to hear about that next.
Yeah. Well, just in terms of history, I want to mention that, Peter Buning was the person that started things, but also his wife, Renata Buning, was a woman that was a very strong influence, and she was the women's national team committee chair. And she was in handball when I wouldn't say very few women. There were no women in the leadership roles in handball, either in coaching or in, any of the administrations, across the world they played. So she was a really big influence, within that. But our first trip was to Iceland. Okay. And that was, in 74, we were at Iowa State for a camp. They picked some people to go to a training thing. We were in New York for maybe 5 days or something like that, and went off to play the Iceland national team for our first ever handball experience. And I was saying we had uniforms we wore the men's 1972 Olympic uniforms that fit like a glove, obviously. Yeah. We were real fashionable there. And had to I think we sewed on or duct taped on those patches from the USTA. They had those patches that had USTHF, and we sewed, and if we didn't have time to sew ours on the sweatshirt, we stuck it on with duct tape. So it was quite the deal. And I remember that we lost 22-4 to that Iceland team. But I'll say that there's lots of funny moments within that too, because we didn't know the rules. The only time we'd ever seen a game was on videotape. And in 1974, it was in black and white and so small, we couldn't even see the ball. So we really didn't know what was happening. And it was the crowd for Iceland thought we were kind of crazy because we make the first pass, to the Iceland team when there was a turnover or something, because we didn't know that you were not supposed to, for basketball, I always gave it to the referee. So we made the first pass for the fast break for the other team. And it was quite comical. But I was pretty proud that we actually scored 4 goals in the time. But a light bulb came on for me. I actually didn't like the game after Iowa State because like Sherry said, it was like hitting, because we didn't know what we were supposed to do, what was contact, what wasn't. And when I saw Iceland, how they played, I fell in love with the game. That was how it was supposed to be played. And we weren't near that. So when Coke said it took us 10 years, it was a journey. It was certainly a journey to be competitive, and we were at the Olympics.
And then with the Iceland trip too, yeah, we lost so badly, and we were just baptism by fire and learning by fire. But it was just a few months later, was it not, that we went back to Iceland and played their national team again, and we tied them 11-11.
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever lost to them again after that. So like Mary Phyl said, that was invaluable, that week that we spent in Iceland, because that truly was our introduction to the game. And with my introduction, I didn't even own a coat. I showed, I'm going to Iceland. I don't even, I'm from Alabama. I had to go out and buy a coat. And then I showed up in tennis shoes and they all laughed at me. I didn't have any boots or anything like that, but I learned quickly about cold weather.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice it was cold.
Yeah, being the Wisconsinite, yes.
Incredible. Well, definitely sounds like like you said, Rita, baptism by fire, and the learning curve. I mean, going a few months later and tying them is quite astounding. Just the amount of learning that you did in such a short period of time is amazing. We can talk a bit more now about the actual '84 Olympics. I'd love to hear, about that whole process, your favorite memories of your teammates, or, just personal favorite memories from the Olympics. What stands out to you from LA '84?
Here, the thing for me, it was hard for me to distinguish the actual games from all the other games we had played, but the I don't know, hoopla, when we went the opening ceremonies, after that, I didn't even care if we played a game. I mean, I don't think my feet touched the ground all the way around the arena. We had played everybody in our pool except for China before. So we were playing against the same teams, but the atmosphere and just the whole pomp and circumstance, I mean, it just took my breath away. So yes, I think we did very well. We were respectable in our games, but there's nothing that will ever compare to that feeling of going into the opening ceremonies for me.
Yeah, the Olympics, there's never anything else in your life. And I think for me anyway, they could ever equate to being in the Olympics. I just don't think there's anything that could ever equate to that. I mean, the number of people you get to meet, interact with, the opening, closing ceremonies. I mean, just even just the thing about getting on a vehicle to go somewhere. I mean, like you go to practice, the whole ceremony of getting on a bus. I mean, they have to check you out. They got to check out of the bus. They got to have people, in front of you. They got to have somebody behind you with, machine guns, and they got to have a helicopter over you, and all that stuff is just, the magnitude of the whole thing. But for me, we weren't expected to do much. And when we beat the Chinese, China, the first game, and we came back to do it. And I'm right now, I'm getting chills about it. I mean, it was just such a phenomenal moment. I can remember like Rita falling to the ground, and like some of the people were like drunk. There was a whole mess. Maybe Rita didn't fall to the ground that game, but I mean, there was a whole mess of people that were like jumping on top of each other and, crying and just screaming and yelling. And the fact that we had won a game was, for some people, that's like winning a gold medal. We won a game, like we won 2. We almost won 3. I mean, we could have had a medal. We were so close to that whole opportunity. And you know, when I think about the games that we played, and I think about you know, how close we were against the Germans, and they were that we could have had a medal even with the lack of knowledge that we had, the lack of experience we had overall versus what they had. It's really remarkable. I also want to say this. I think that the saddest moment in my life up until that point was when we departed. The saddest moment of my life was sitting on a curb. And when my teammates were leaving, because we had lived together, and I just, it was such a blow to these people that we had gone through so much. And you know, it was a very sad moment for me, because they were just family. They were people we ate with, you know, we ate with, we danced with, we played with, we fought sometimes, but it was family. And to see them depart to go all over, you know, where they came from was that was tough.
Yeah, you know, I think the scope too. I you know, when people ask me about the Olympics, I think sometimes they think, like, you know, Coke was saying and Rita is that it was 10 years that we played on the national, well, the 3 of us, like say Sherry's that youngster over there, you know, but that we played on the national team. And so it was a process all along the way. And there were so many things that we did together. And the Olympics, though, the perspective I think a lot of people didn't understand too, is it was when we beat China, it was our first home game ever. When I played on that day, there's a ceremony they give you when you play your 100th game against national teams. And I played, that was my 100th game against national teams when we played against China. And I'm saying, you know, and that was the first home game, you know, truly home game that we had against a national team ever in 10 years. And to have the crowd yelling USA, you know, and when we came back, you know, we were behind and we came back. It was phenomenal. And the it's kind of later, but you said about with teammates and with these people, after we won, we were at Cal State Fullerton in our locker room. When we went into the locker room, when you went out the back of the locker room, it went into the swimming pool. And one of my favorite moments is after all that, Sherry said, crazy celebrating stuff, everybody ended up in the locker room, and we all, I don't even know who started it, but it was like we went out that door to the swimming pool and we all jumped in the pool in our uniforms. It was hilarious. That was pretty special.
Before we go on, Mary Phyl, I do want to just cut in really quickly, because on the Facebook Live, there have been a number of people wishing you happy birthday. So I would be remiss not to share those. We have Daniel Foster, Michael Leonard, Chuck Lillis, and Ginny Mickle.
Yeah.
So just wanted to share the birthday messages with you really quickly before we go on.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Appreciate it.
Rita, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Coke.
Oh, no, I was trying to get Phyl to say how old she was, but
I can. You can subtract. I'll say that too. You can figure it out. Okay. So at the Olympics, my nickname was Grandma, because at the Olympics I was 32. So, you know, that's, you know, I'm kind of proud of that, actually, you know, that was the case, you know. So
when you think about, you know, that I was with you guys, you know, we were there for 10 years, and really I was 29 at the Olympics, and I'm very proud of that, because we really were technically past our prime, and to hang on and train that hard for that many years and finally, you know, reach the ultimate goal of being Olympian is, to me, it's one of the biggest accomplishments in my life. And it's one of the things I'm the most proud of, because there was a lot of times I did not want to dive into that circle anymore. And
yeah,
you know, not so I could take it without water, because everything ached. And so, you know, it's an accomplishment to hang on that long. But I think one of the reasons that our team did well at the Olympics was we had a bond that is hopefully it's still evident in the way we're talking about each other right now. We had a bond that it's never going to go away. But the other thing I wanted to add was I had a lot of people at the Olympics, you know, after the game, they said, you know what, why didn't you guys win? It's obviously you're the better athletes. And I would say we still haven't learned all the little intricacies of this sport. And it just takes years and years to get that. But it made me feel good that they recognized that our team really had some, you know, top athletes.
Rita, I wanted to pass it off to you and have you say a few words as well.
Yeah, I don't know that I could add any more than what Dave said about the entire experience of the Olympic Games. And but one of the things in just reflecting, particularly on the opening ceremonies, like I think for all of us, that was the defining moment of the experience. And like Coach said, just set the tone for everything for us moving forward. But, you know, the 80 games were boycotted because of Russia invasion of Afghanistan, and we were in this, you know, Cold War with the Soviet Union. And still in 1984, there was a lot of, you know, political rhetoric and turmoil surrounding those games. And even, you know, there were several of the Eastern Bloc countries that, you know, that boycotted the 84 Olympic Games. But one of the things that was stunning to me and was when we walked into the stadium, and it was so awesome because all of the other teams had already assembled on the infield. And so it was such a beautiful day. And it was just all this light and color and music, and, you know, all of your senses were so engaged in that. But I don't know if y'all remember how close the track was to the stands. And you could literally look into the stands and see people and look into their eyes. And since then, I've just thought about that experience and about coming off that boycott year, this Olympic Games being boycotted. But when you're there in the opening ceremonies, it's like the whole world, almost at least one person from every country in the world is gathered in that one place, and they're celebrating. They're happy, they're celebrating what's good about human beings. And I just gained a new appreciation for the Olympic Games after that experience, not only as a grand institution of sport, but an institution of peace and brotherhood and goodwill, because the Olympic Games does that every 4 years for 2 weeks. It just kind of temporarily interrupts what's going on in the world and brings us together as one humanity to celebrate what's good about us. And so I was really very impressed that the Olympic Games does that, and just, you know, very, very privileged to be a part of something like that.
I agree.
Very well said, Rita. Very well said. I know you mentioned the 1980 boycotted team, and I know Mary, Phil, Coke, and you, Rita, had made that, or were on the national team for that. If you three wanted to talk a bit about that experience, I'd be really curious to hear about, you know, what that was like, and then hearing the news of that the U.S. would be boycotting those games.
Rita, why don't you lead it off?
I don't know really what to say about it. I think, you know, for us, it's stunning news. And I think that, you know, it was hard to understand in the moment. So many people were going to lose an opportunity for their one chance to, you know, compete in the Olympic Games. And one of the teams trained with us there in Colorado Springs at the time, and that was the U.S. women's volleyball team, which I think had finished third in the World Championships, and, you know, were definitely going to be a medal contender in those games. And so many of those women, that was going to be their last time around, and you kind of hurt for them. I don't know what really to say about those games, but one of the things I was proud of our team before we left Colorado Springs, everybody just kind of dispersed. How did we do this, Phyl? When we got those two vans and we put the balls and the goals in the back of the van, and we toured around the Midwest.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's hometown. Yeah. So nobody wanted to go home. So we just decided we would do this little tour, and I don't know how many. It was a couple of weeks or so, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
Everybody's hometown, and we had demonstrations of handball. So it was like, what I remember, I mean, talk about high tech, we had to make our own posters, and we did cut out pictures of ourselves and put them on posters. And we held those up when we were at the games, you know, and put them in the lobby and stuff. But we did like a development tour, you know, and we went to as many hometowns as we could, driving in vans. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think we had so many players from the Midwest, so we went to their hometowns, and we stayed in people's houses, and you know, we taped the court every night. We, you know, put up the goals. We played an exhibition game, and then we had a little social afterwards, you know, with the people in the town, and it was really cool. And it was a one way for us to kind of, you know, spread a little bit of word about the sport, and you know, to give back a little bit, and also for us to spend a little bit more time together, because it was hard kind of dispersing.
Yeah. And one other thing about the 1980 thing was, like I said, the qualification in 1980 was in the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, talk about, you know, a trip, you know, where you fly into the airport and there's no electricity, you know, and you know, houses don't have, like, the airport had electricity, and there were kids under street lights reading, because, you know, where they were, their homes didn't have electricity. And we were, you know, from the Congo, we were these, I wouldn't say I was tall, but there were tall people on our team. And all these tall white women that they'd never seen when we got off I mean, we were like this phenomena, you know, of what the heck, you know, are these people? And so the Congo was really another bonding experience, because it was so different, and you know, from our culture to, and we played in a soccer stadium where they put the court right next to some bleachers. You know, they laid down a court, and at each exit there were guys with machine guns. And as I remember, if you guys correct me, but there was only men in the stands. They'd only let men come in the stands, and it was and the court, because they just laid it down on top of the pit stuff. There was sand all over the court, so it was, and the humidity was about 110%, and we were sweating like crazy. It was quite the competition. I'll tell you that. It was really something.
It definitely sounds like that. Oh, sorry, Rita, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and another bad thing about being in a country like that, Coke was seriously injured there. And it was, I don't know, it was kind of touch and go getting her back home and getting her well again. So that's another thing about Coke's toughness, and how she was able to recover from that injury and make it back to be with us on the 84 team as well.
Absolutely. That is tough. I just wanted to, again, mention something that someone commented. Cindy Stinger commented, Rita taught us all what Olympism meant, and I will never forget that. So I thought I would share that. And as an aside to everyone watching this right now, if you have any questions for these 4 Olympians, feel free to comment in the chat, and we'll be doing a bit of a open Q&A at the very end. So thought I would mention that as well. But I figured we would talk a bit about, you know, we would be remiss not to mention the fact that the Olympics are coming back to LA in around 7 years now. So, you know, how does it make you feel to know that the Olympics are coming back to the US, but more specifically coming back to LA where you all competed?
You know, after hearing Mary, Phil, and Rita talk about the tour where they took a tour around the country, they left me in the hospital in Colorado Springs because I had in the Congo. So I'm going to propose right now that we redo that van tour, and I will pick you up on the way through because I missed the first tour.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah, that would be fun.
That would be fun. Well, we all saw each other in November 2018 at the USOC reunion that they had in at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, and I'm sure handball had more people there than anybody else, don't you think? I mean, in terms of because that was all sports. That was all sports, not just handball. But anyway, we got to that's the last time that we actually got to see each other. But while we were there, we knew that the Olympics were going to end up being in LA. So we already started talking that we need to establish a handball house instead of, USA house or whatever they do, a handball house. And we should have a reunion because our group, our 1994 group, and I want to say not people that were just on that made the team, but people that were on the national team, et cetera. We really tried to every about 5 years get together and have a reunion. So we've really kept in contact with each other, which has been special. So we've already started talking about it, that what a great reunion spot that might be to go watch those games.
And once again, I think that it's opportunity for team handball to use it as a platform. And so, we've had opportunities as a sport. We've not succeeded as a sport yet. I mean, we've had some good opportunities. We got the ball rolling a couple of times. In 1984 we did, in 1996 we did. But this is an opportunity once again for Americans and to understand how wonderful the sport is. I really think that, like all of us did fall in love with the sport. I think that if more of America saw it and had the opportunity to play it, I think there would be a lot of people who would fall in love with it. It's fast paced. It's a high scoring game. A lot of action in it, incredible plays. Now the women and the men, the things they can do now, oh my gosh, it's an opportunity. So I'm hoping that once again, that this time the Handball Federation will step up and not just get something rolling, there, but really extend that and make handball, a household name again. I think not again, but a household name in the United States, where people like us who had I can't find it. I wouldn't find it. Probably an 84 teammate who would say that that was probably one of the best experiences of their life, was that whole, not just the 84 games, but the entire experience was one of the best experiences of their life. And to not give other people that opportunity is sad. So I'm hoping that that's something that will happen.
For sure.
So we do have an audience question that I'm going to intersperse in here. It's from Sandra De La Riva, repeat.
Yes.
Who was your favorite handball coach and why?
Okay. No comment. Well,
I'm going to say this.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know if it was my favorite, but Stan Wojcicki, if it hadn't been for him, we would have never gotten the 3 steps down. We would have never learned the pistol movement. The fundamentals that he just drilled into us day in and day out, I think that was a foundation that helped so much. By the time, Javier came along, at least we had, we were halfway fundamentally sound to kind of, learn from someone who was a more technical, like Javier learned the game from him, but we learned the basics from Stan. So I will always be appreciative of him.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say my favorite coaches were Rita, Phyl, and Coke. So there you go. And Pam in the goal was very helpful for me too. Pam in the goal.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but I'm saying piggyback on that, because Stan, yes, taught us those basics, and then the senior people, that started at the very beginning, we got to be coaches at the sports festival. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we recruited players, and then we had to teach them handball, and so we learned the basics. And we became students of the game on the basics, because like Coke said, you had to learn the fine points. We had the athletic ability, but the people we were playing against had been playing since they were 10 years old, and they just knew the sport. And so learning those basics and teaching them to other people was really important. And you wanted your and all the time you have to say, like Rita and Coke and I, we were there 10 years, but in that time, the team was different all the time. There were 5 of us. There were 5 people in 1984 that started in 1974. And then the rest of the team was all in and out and new. So we had to do, we also, like, we coached our own teammates in the while we were having a coach too. We had to do a lot of teaching.
You know, I think we would be remiss not to mention Peter Buning, who brought the sport from Germany. How many years did he push to get the sport going? And he was the one who sent, I think, was the organizer of sending the letters to the universities. And I don't know, he must have been involved for 30 years or so. So, but there, you know, we had a lot of, and you know, and it was just like any coach that you have, you know, there's good memories and bad memories, but somehow I think all of the combination of coaches is, you know, made our team what it was. It made us sometimes closer because, you know, no matter what, we weren't going to quit, and it all worked out. So there's a few I don't remember that well, I guess. But.
Yeah. That's a good point. All that combination makes you tough that way. Yeah, knowing that. And like you said, you can learn something from each one of them. That's for sure. Sometimes not so good stuff, but
I think too.
One of my favorite memories, so Phil, I've got to bring this up since we're talking about coaches. Yeah. And I remember where we were, but it was Ilya, and he liked to pick on me a little bit about I should block every shot. Yeah. Had me stand there, and it was shot after shot after shot that I was supposed to block, and you came to my rescue. Yeah, it was like, you know, so you have to understand, like, I was a coach, so I'm playing on, but I was coaching, you know, at my own university. And at this point in time, he was just being abusive. I mean, that was the bottom line. He was abusive. And so I went to him and told him he was a blocker, you know. I mean, basically this.
And you framed his head when you were standing there in front of him. You said, "You are a blockhead."
And his reply to me was, "You don't understand woman psychology," you know, at the time. You know? And at that point, it was kind of overwhelming, and we just quit practice, you know. And that was the best move he made, you know, is to say, things aren't going well here. We need to regroup. But yeah, there, like I say, good moments, you know, not so good, but really, like I said, total experience was great.
Yeah, it was. And I just think that the timing of things too, having Stan and then Javier, the combination of those two really gave us a strong technical and a stronger technical and tactical, you know, foundation. And then the people that came after that, I think we rode that for a long time, you know, what we learned from those two coaches, or at least for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Very interesting stuff. And obviously, Mary Phil, like you were saying, there's some good and some not so good, some good, bad, and ugly. But that's part of the whole experience. So exactly. I appreciate you sharing it. Sherry, I wanted to give you the opportunity to share a bit of a story that you were telling me earlier, just about some of the competitors you faced, and, you know, maybe some things that wouldn't be possible today. And I'd love for everyone to kind of answer the question of, like, what did your competitions and the Olympics look like, and how were they different from kind of present day? So Sherry, do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I'll tell you when I can remember, I had not traveled anywhere before, so I go one of the first trips we went on, and it was really funny because I can remember thinking, here we go in, and here comes, we're not playing a national team, it was a club team at the time, and they come in, and it's in the gym, so this woman's smoking, and she's got like 3 kids behind her, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're gonna kick their butts. No. First of all, no, because they had so much more experience, and I you know, because I thought, well, we trained really hard, and we're such great shape, and we're working out twice a day. So that was kind of like, and she was puny. And then we met the East Germans at the time and the Russians. And, you know, I'm sure they were on steroids because these women, I mean, they had tree trunks for legs. And of course I'm 5'5". So I'm looking, you know, I don't even get past about their navel. So, you know, so this is about there's, you know, I thought I was playing great defense and I'm hitting them about, you know, at midsection because they're so far above me shooting. They were massive women. Their muscles and their body were I mean, like, I'm sure that they couldn't even feel me touching them. Like, I thought I was deterring them. I'm sure it wasn't even like that at all. It was just amazing. And at the time, there wasn't not a lot of drug testing at that level. It just kind of started around 1984. And then, you know, of course, drug testing is always trying to catch up with the people who are trying to gain the advantage. But these women were massive.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It was interesting because, you know, we talked about playing for 10 years. Well, after we went to Iceland, and then we had the series with Canada to be able to qualify for the 75, right? World Championships. Was it 75?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we ended up qualifying for the World Championships. Okay, so we end up, the World Championships are in that time in Russia. Okay, well, no, not Russia. Well, it was in Russia, but it was the Soviet Union at the time. Okay, so when we go over there, it was like, you know, the same. You know, our first game we got beat 33-2, I think, and it was against the Soviet Union. 4? You think it was 4? Okay, I thought it was 2. But anyway, the point is, we led the game. You know, we led, you know, 2-1, and then after that it was kind of all over. But yeah, the difference was, though, like I said, learning the fine points, and like Cook said, is like at that moment when we were playing at that time, you know, the first games we played, was all you could do is kind of try to muscle people around, you know, maybe grab their shirt, or maybe because we had no finesse, you know, at the time. And so that was what changed and was so much fun. It was becoming a student of the game and really learning the sport, and not just, you know, like go, well, I'll just tackle her, you know, if she's in there, you know, no, that's not how you play the game. You know, there's a lot of, and we really, and then it was fun because we were playing in the World Championships against the best, and it was like modeling. You got to watch people, and you started in your head, because to model people and say, oh, okay. And I know Coke has to be one of the ones, because she was in the pits in the it's like a pit crew in the circle, and that's where everything goes on, nobody sees, you know. And she learned a lot of tricks of the trade from people doing things to her, you know, and then she'd kind of pass them along at the sports festival, you know.
Absolutely right. I mean, it was eye-opening, and it was like another college education, how, you know, just their subtle movements, and they'd clamp your arm and pull you out of the way, and you can bet I learned all of them, and I used them all. So it was a very good.
Yeah. You definitely had to pay attention to what other people were doing. That's for sure.
How big how big and strong they were. I can remember one time the ball went across the court, and then I turned to slide across, and I ran into this person. I bounced off. She did not budge. It was like hitting from Romania. It was, wow. I went, wow.
Yeah. One other thing about playing against that caliber of people, and you know, those are national, because we played a lot of club teams, but the World Championship, every game we played, and we traveled all over the Soviet Union. We were in 3 different cities: Moscow, Kiev, Lithuania. You know, so we what a trip we had to see all that country. But you know, we really did were able to learn stuff, you know, from those games, and the caliber of athletes that we are playing against at that level. That's for sure.
So there are not a ton of questions in the comments, but a whole lot of love and a lot of comments about, how wonderful you all are. So Dorothy Franco Reed said, "You ladies were great players and ambassadors for all of us." So thought I would share that with you all.
Thank you,
Hey,
Franco.
Yeah,
One of
She
my
had
questions,
stories.
yeah, I'm sure. One of the questions that I made sure I wanted to ask you for was, I just from speaking to you four can tell that you are, you have an abundance of knowledge and you're all just incredibly wise people. So I wanted to ask if you had any specific advice for, younger generations of athletes that are trying to pursue their handball dreams of, someday representing the US and making it to the Olympics. I'd love for, each of you to just kind of share some words of advice.
Do I get to go first again? Because it's my
Yeah.
birthday.
Up to you.
Oh, I'll share. The one thing I think, is I had that Olympic dream when I was a kid. You have something, and I had just a love of competition and sports. And I think that's the key, is to find something that you just love doing, and that no matter what, you just, and there's not that it's always going to be, perfect all the time, because there's going to be ups and downs, but that you find something you love, which the irony for me, I found handball and I went, I don't know if I like this sport. And then it turned into my love, of handball. And it really suited all the things that my strengths. And so I think that's it. And then two other is part of that is just enjoy the journey, because like Cook said, that it's not just the Olympic Games, even though we were in the Olympic Village for a month. Most people don't maybe understand that, because it was 2 weeks of competition and 2 weeks prior to that, but we were 10 years training, 10 years training, and we traveled all over the world. I mean, we were in, I don't know, 50 different countries, maybe. I don't know. We were in a lot of countries. So enjoy the journey. And then the most important part was the people you're doing it with, these teammates, because if you can't enjoy the journey unless you enjoy the people you're doing it with. And that part was consistent. We had different coaches, we had different administration at sometimes, and they gave us all kinds of great opportunities, the Bunings, the Javiers, the Stans, even Clement and Ilya. I mean, they all gave us different things as coaches and stuff, but it was the consistency of the teammates. Just like, remember, they're in the airport, we would fly into where we're going to be training, and some of us would meet at the place called the Tartan Tray at the Chicago airport. And I always remember the Tartan Tray, because we would just light up. We'd meet at the Tartan Tray, which is a cafeteria, because we all came from all different parts of the country, but we came into Chicago. And so that's the difference. Like Coke said, appreciate your teammates, appreciate the experience.
Very well said, Mary Phyl. All right, who's next?
Well, I would say, after having coached for 23 years, one of the things that I know is that oftentimes we are our own worst enemies. And so what I would suggest to anybody who really wants to be their best at anything is to work on that internal voice that we have, the voice that limits us, the voice that puts obstacles in our path, the voice that keeps us small, and to really pay attention to that internal language and the internal things we do to ourselves, because so many of us, and I was guilty of this for many years, is that I let my thoughts think me and I didn't think my thoughts. And so it kept me small, and it kept me not at the level that I could have been. And I've seen this with athletes everywhere. I mean, all the athletes that I coached, I really wanted them to be their best. And so we really focused on that mental ability, that mental toughness, that ability to play longer in the zone, the ability to get outside of all the limitations they put on themselves. And so many times I just feel that we can do so much more, but we keep ourselves small for all the fears that we have. So don't let the fears contain you, and be the winner you were born to be.
I don't know that I could add
My
anything.
my only
These are all
advice,
tough to
Go
follow.
ahead.
I'm not gonna lie. These are really tough to follow.
the only thing I was going to add is that, and it was advice that I've given a lot of young athletes, you know, if they're going off to try to make a college team and stuff, is, you know, don't cut yourself. Let the coaches cut you, you know, go there and you try your hardest. Don't cut yourself, because other people are going to fall along the wayside, and just hang in there and don't give up. But just, that was always my motto to them. Don't cut yourself. So don't give up.
I don't know that there's anything more that I can add than what the wonderful things that they've said and the advice that the three of them have given. You know, I'm a big believer in the truth and power of dreams, and I believe that our dreams are the knowledge and language of our hearts, and our hearts know the truth about what we're capable of doing and who we can become. So I would just say, you know, give yourself time to lean into your life regularly, and just, you know, and just imagine the greatest version of the grandest vision that you could have about, you know, what you're pursuing, and just let that fuel you and be a motivation for you, you know, because, you know, like Einstein said, your imagination is the preview to your life's coming attractions. So maybe it'd be worth time spending there.
And I want to add one thing to that too, because I know all of us saw ourselves walking into that stadium. And when I walked in, and I'm sure they had the same feeling, I felt like it was a rerun. It was, I'd seen myself coming into that stadium. And so it was like, is this a dream, or is this my imagination, you know, that I thought about in different, you know, ways. And even as a kid, I knew I wanted to be Olympian. It didn't matter. I didn't know what sport it was. I just knew I wanted to, you know, it didn't matter. And it didn't matter that I didn't even see very many role models at that time that were women, very few. You know, oh, and I wanted to say too that Rayford Johnson, who lit the Olympic torch in 1984, passed away. And what a great decathlon! And he was one of those people as a kid that I loved, decathletes. And so I was so excited that he was the lit the torch in '84, and he just passed away. And a great Olympian person.
Absolutely. Olympic icon for sure. We did get one question, so I'm going to have all of you take a stab at it. From Tom Reed. He asked, share your thoughts on how Team USA can field strong competitive teams at the LA 2028 Olympic Games.
Okay, who wants to start?
It's an easy one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, because I coached for 23 years, because I know, I believe in the power of coaching, I would say the first thing we have to do is to make sure that we have great coaches. And what I mean by great coaches is not just people who know the sport, but people who know people. So people who are leaders and who understand the power of leading people and making the person the best they can become, not just the best athlete, but the best person. And so I know that there are many other things to happen, but if you don't have that great coach, if you don't have that person who can really envision the dream, who can motivate, who can bring the best out of people, and who understands the sport, it just won't happen. And so at every level, when you have great coaches who are great leaders, who can inspire and motivate, that's always the starting point for me.
And I'd piggyback on that in terms of that those coaches and administrators, which I think we're getting there, but is that they have a true desire that handball, it's not just the results of the Olympic Games. You know, it's the outreach, it's everything that is the, you know, that's, they got to have, you know, that love of the sport, that love of handball in the United States, you know, not just, you know, it's, you know, a 4-year gig and that's it, you know, that long-term commitment. And to do that, I think, you know, it obviously starts with youth development, et cetera, and getting people that they'll have that thing for team handball. They'll start to love it, and then the coaches just you know, use that motivation and their motivated for USA handball. Yeah.
We've talked about this so many times. It's the $1 million question. And I'm hoping that the new direction that the handball, USA handball is taking, will take effect, and they'll be able to have enough money to run some of these programs and develop a team. But it is the $1 million question. There's a lot of different things that have been tried, and we just have to keep pecking away at it. But it's a tough deal.
I don't think I have any more to add.
Yeah. I'll put in a plug for a sponsor, because we talked about Verizon, a communications thing that that's one of our sponsors that's getting us at least out there. I mean, I'm so excited that you can actually, it might be still in the middle of the night, but you can find handball games. I mean, you can actually watch, handball because of the internet. So at least, it again brings me back to the first time we saw the game was on a little, 8-inch video monitor in black and white, where we couldn't tell what the heck they were doing, and so that gives some hope again to the future, that people can see the game and great video highlights and that kind of stuff, so they could get excited maybe about it, even before they go to a tryout where they have no idea what the game is. So that helps, that helps having a sponsor like Verizon.
Definitely. Very well said. I feel like I could talk to you all for like 3 more hours and we could just keep this going. This is phenomenal and I've learned so much. So I really appreciate the 4 of you taking the time. Since it is, at the hour mark, I do want to respect y'all's time, and maybe we can just do a round of final words or final thoughts if anyone has any.
Well, I'll since I get to be this because it's my birthday, right?
Yeah.
I'll just reiterate how much I appreciate the opportunity that Team Handball has given me. That led to these people, though my other teammates, just the appreciation that I was able to, that Rita talked about the world scene, that I, because I traveled and got to interact with all people of all different nations and realized they were just, even if they were smoking cigarettes at halftime, in some instances at club level, not at the national level, but we were all just playing a game that we enjoyed. And I think that perspective, that world perspective, certainly changed my life. And I'm so grateful for that. And
I agree. Like having the opportunity, the way that we got to train and be together. When I look at other Olympic teams who just came together for a couple of months, and we lived together, and I think that's a big difference, is that we lived together and we had parties together. We had crazy parties together. Rita used to sing, and they would sing and play the guitar, and we just did so many things together that the bond was different, and that's why we've kept up with each other over the years. And these people have been, not only were they instrumental in my growth when I was a player, but they've been instrumental in my life all this time. And what I've learned from them, the conversations I've had from them throughout all this time, it's you can't even imagine how special the team was and is to this day. I don't think anybody else could understand, like when we have to sit for dinner, when we go to these dinners, it'd be like a 2-hour dinner. And we have to talk to each other because you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have Walkmans, you had to communicate and be real. And so the education of all of that was just phenomenal. And I'm so blessed to have had it.
I have to laugh because we were saying no cell phones. But do you remember sitting at the table when we started to ban people reading at the table? People were starting to read books, and we say, no, if you're at the table, no reading of books.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just sitting here and talking and, on the Zoom or whatever this is, it to me, it just makes my whole body smile, and it brings back all those memories and all those wonderful times. When you live in a little town in northern Wisconsin, you don't have a lot of opportunities to share, your history with handball. So this has just been absolutely a blessing tonight, and it brings back all the memories, and there's not one thing that I would do differently. All the hard times, all the good times, and I've just been sitting here smiling.
Yeah. Ditto.
Yes, ditto, Coke, and everybody. And I would just say too, handball was just such a gift, and in so many ways, on so many levels. And it was not only an athletic adventure and an opportunity for us to discover the best within ourselves through athletics, but I think just the group of people that we were with, I think we brought out the best in each other. And the greatest gift of it all was just the relationships with people and the bonds that we still hold. And so, yeah, it's been, thank you for putting this together, Melissa,
Yeah.
for us. And we've enjoyed it a lot, I know. And just so good to see y'all and everybody that's tuning in. It's very, 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 very special.
Thank you, Rita. Well said. Mike Leonard said Rita's last bit here should be a rendition of Rocky Top.
Yeah.
Rita, I'm not going to put you on the spot if you don't want to. That's totally fine. I figured I would just share, but just again, a testament to how close the viewers are to all of you and how much they're enjoying this conversation as well. So thank you for your time and for sharing your stories. I hope I get to tell more of them and share more of them in the coming months and years. But I really enjoyed this, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you everyone for tuning in to this edition of our Facebook Live series. The next one will be in 2 weeks, and we will have Matt Ryan from the 96 team talking to two of our current men's national team athletes in a sort of passing the torch conversation. So again, really appreciated this. Thank you so much for doing it to the four of you. And I hope everyone has a lovely night and stay well and stay healthy.
Okay.
Hi, y'all.